Hey there, welcome into the College Basketball Bracket Science Podcast Network on YouTube, on Apple, on Spotify. I'm your host for today, and we got a fun show. We're going to be doing our first mailbag episode of the season. For those who don't know what a mailbag is, basically we post stuff on our Instagram of leave your comments, ask your questions about teams for this upcoming season, or pretty much anything in the college basketball world. And I will answer them on the show, give them a give the question makers a shout out and, just kind of give my insights on, what to maybe expect for this upcoming season. So we got a bunch of good questions. Thanks to everyone for sending those in. I'll try and keep it somewhat brief for some of the, some of the questions, but I also want to, give the love of, supporting the questions that everyone was asking. I did combine a few, a couple people were asking about, Tennessee, a couple people were asking about Michigan State. So I did combine a few, but I will still, give you the shout out and let you know that I really appreciate everyone sending in those questions. Before we dive in to the show, make sure you follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Bracket Science with 2 S's. That's where we posted, for the mailbag. So if you're kind of new to this, it's great. Love to have you here on YouTube or whether you're listening on Apple or Spotify, but also give us a follow on Instagram and TikTok. It's a fun little community that we have over there. And also be sure to like before you head out and subscribe to the show. Turn on the post notifications as ball is starting 1 week from today. When I'm recording this about 6 o'clock on Monday. So we're less than, whatever 24 times 7 is, we're less than that to college basketball as it's going to be starting on Monday, November 3rd. Can't wait. So like, subscribe, follow on Instagram and TikTok. Let's dive right into it. Now I'm going to pull up some other graphics of it's just stuff pulled from our Instagram and from our TikTok as well. Just kind of to go along with some of these questions, but it's not going to be, a lot of them aren't going to be, specific to the actual question, if that makes sense. We'll just get going and, I'll kind of show you. All right, starting from Jack Mormon. The first question is IU, Indiana, going to make the tournament this upcoming season? So I pulled up this graphic, as you can see up here in the top right. I do have Indiana as a 9 seed coming into, this is just my prediction. Doesn't mean much. Obviously, things are going to change like crazy. I think Indiana is going to get there in year one, mostly because of Darian DeVries. The roster looks a little bit, I could see them not making the tournament, but I would, if I had to bet my life on it, I would bet that Indiana does get in the tournament. I think they got a better chance than not. Hopefully Tucker DeVries is, 100% back to normal. He's going to be awesome. He is like a sneaky pick for a first team all Big Ten, potential All-American caliber player, because the ball is going to be in his hands a ton as long as he is healthy. I love the addition of Lamar Wilkerson. I think he's going to be awesome just as a 3-point shooter, which Indiana fans just haven't seen in forever. Lamar Wilkerson, obviously Tucker DeVries as well. Those are going to be the guys. Connor Enright as well can also knock down some threes. Now, Reed Bailey transferring up from Davidson. He had a tremendous impact last year. However, he was at Davidson. And, so that's going to be the thing. Can he really, transfer up as well as we're expecting him to? Same goes with Lamar Wilkerson, transferring up from Sam Houston State. I'm confident that Lamar Wilkerson's going to transfer up in the correct landscape. But will Reed Bailey, that's kind of my biggest concern. Will they have a true rim protector? Not a bunch of size. Reed Bailey is their tallest guy at 6'11". We know he's not like an elite rim defender. And then outside of that, their next tallest guy is Sam Alexis from that Florida team last year, who couldn't get on the floor for Florida. Now take that with a grain of salt. That Florida front court was absolutely awesome last year. However, was not really impressed with what Sam Alexis did for, obviously he kind of just played himself out of that rotation. So is IU going to make the tournament? I think so. I would bet yes. Wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world if not, but I would be a little bit surprised. I think Darian DeVries is going to get there. The more I look at this roster, the more I like it. So I'm buying into the Darian DeVries. Thank you, Jack, for the question. All right, next up, we're going to kind of combine two here. At Trip and Chips, is Tennessee good? And also at Douglas Eaton 42, possible for Tennessee to make the Final Four. So let's start with Trip and Ticks here. Is Tennessee good? Yes, they are. Now, just how good will they be? Let's talk about that for Douglas Eaton here. As you can see in my prediction, I have them as a 4 seed. Past 2 seasons, they've been a 2 seed. I know a lot of people are going to bring up the exhibition game that they just played against Duke, which Cam Boozer, my goodness, we're gonna talk about that here in a little bit with a separate question. But just in general for Tennessee, I always tell people, do not look too much into these exhibition results. However, you can kind of look at individual players and just see if they're competent or not. Now, Tennessee did not shoot the ball well. Jacoby Gillespie, who I will continue to pronounce his name wrong and people will correct me on it. I swear I'll get there one day. Gillespie. It just flows so much better. Gillespie. Jacoby Gillespie and Nate Ament did not shoot the ball well. Nate Ament really looked like he was forcing some shots. I believe he ended the game 5 for 19 or 6 for 20 or something. I had stuff going on. I turned on the game, kind of late towards the second half and was just really wanted to tune into Nate Ament and see what he was about. Now, obviously, Cam Boozer stole the show. Nate Ament's going to have to grow for this team to become a Final Four team. However, for Tennessee, under Rick Barnes the past couple years, especially last year, they've gotten off to really hot starts. They've been a little bit underrated in the preseason. They get off to really hot starts and then they slow down a little bit. They don't slow down much. Obviously, they've been spectacular the past 2 seasons, but I think it's going to be the opposite this year. I think they're going to struggle a little bit to start, and if Nate Ament can really grow into form under Rick Barnes, I believe he can do it, and I'm just taking it from one exhibition game, and it's against Duke. So we'll see if he can gain some confidence against some of his, easy opponents, to say the least. And if he can really, become that guy along with Gillespie making down some shots, it's anything possible for this Tennessee team. I've been higher on them than most going into the season. However, I am kind of aware they might get off to a slower start. Is it possible for Tennessee to make the Final Four? I think so. I wouldn't bet it. I wouldn't bet probably anyone to make the Final Four. That's really asking a lot. But I do see a little bit more of a ceiling with this team than the past 2. Now, the past 2 had really good chances to make the Final Four, so I would say it's less likely than the past 2 seasons. It's just how good can Nate Ament be? Tennessee, though, always going to be a lot of fun. And let's just give a quick shout out to Tennessee, Kentucky, Louisville. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of others, but for hosting these exhibition games televised, first off, getting them on television is awesome. And, these fans getting into it and basically selling out the arenas, that's pretty awesome. That's pretty cool for college basketball, getting people into the thick of things. All right, Michael Kane 9. Who is your sleeper for the season? I'm going to break this down into a couple. Sleepers, can be a wide range of things, whether that's, sleeper to win the national championship, sleeper to make the Final Four, make a deep run, whether that's a mid-major sleeper. So I'm going to talk about a couple of them here. The first thing that pops into my mind when I hear sleeper team for the season is Maryland. I think Maryland's being vastly underrated. I listen to a lot of media outlets that are kind of just selling on Maryland this early in the season. I understand Buzz Williams seems to always kind of have a ceiling. He's never been like in the conversation to win a national championship. Like last year, what were they, a 4 seed? They were a 4 seed, lost to Michigan in the round of 32. They were up to at one point in bracketology, they were up to like a 2 seed, but no one was really ever talking about them winning the national championship. Now it is Texas A&M. It's not like it's, Kentucky, no disrespect to Texas A&M, but it's not like a rich history of, national championships. Like they're a great program, but I think with him going to Maryland and bringing the continuity with him, with Solomon Washington and with Farrell Payne, I like that a lot because, quite frankly, those were my 2 favorite players on the team last year. Solomon Washington is a freak athlete. I never really realized it until I saw him play in person in the Players Era Festival. And it was just kind of one of those things where in warmups, you're like, oh my God, who is that guy? It's just a different type of athleticism. They lose Anderson Garcia, who was just a menace on the offensive rebounds. We talked forever last year about how good Texas A&M was, just kind of the buzzball style, just forcing up shots and scoring all your possessions on offensive rebounds. However, I think Farrell Payne is in for a huge season this upcoming season. Every time I watched this guy last year, he's just a good basketball player. He's got a good mind on him. He's a big body down low, can shot block, can rebound, can score, has decent touch. I think Farrell Payne's going to have a big jump this upcoming season. In a transfer that is flying completely under the radar, Miles Rice. Nobody is talking enough about Miles Rice. Miles Rice was awesome 2 years ago. He led Washington State to a win in the NCAA tournament. He's got that great story, obviously. And then last year, I think he just made a bad move by going to play for Mike Woodson, quite frankly. No one's, You go play for Mike Woodson, you basically become a worse shooter than you already are. I think Miles Rice is going to be in for a huge rebound year. He has the build, he has the athleticism. With him, Solomon Washington, and Pharrell Payne, that's a tremendous big three. Now, I've been seeing a lot of people put in Maryland, they're going to be a bubble team all year, and I have them as a 10 seed. I would not be shocked if this team ends up, a 5-7 seed and is a sneaky, really good pick to make a little bit of a run. Let's talk a little bit more about their roster. They also bring in Isaiah Watts. They bring in Elijah Saunders. Elijah Saunders has a deep history of winning. Bring in David Coit. Remember David Coit from Kansas last year, who was one of Kansas's best players on a disappointing Kansas team, but he's also coming here to probably back up Miles Rice. I like this team. I think this team, they also have Darius Adams, a freshman. I think this team's going to be better than people are expecting. I'll keep it going on this sort of just talk of sleepers. I'll bring up a few more. Ole Miss is another team that I think is vastly underrated coming into this upcoming season. I think they're underrated. I'm not quite sure they're a sleeper to go incredibly deep. I just trust Chris Beard. I trust his system. I trust his internal player development there. I like the transfers they brought in. I think Ole Miss is going to be better. I'm not going to dive too deep into them because my main pick is Maryland in this situation. If you're looking for a mid-major who could be an incredible sleeper, look at the 11 seed lines. USF, they're my team to win the American this year. I don't have Memphis winning the American. I have USF. Loyola Chicago is another one of them, but I'm going to go with UC Irvine, who I have on the 12 line. People don't talk enough about UC Irvine. They were fantastic last year. They just got overshadowed by UC San Diego. Mid-major wise, I'm going UC Irvine. I also love James Madison. I think this is going to be the year we finally start to see, as long as, these teams live up to the expectations. This is asking a lot and a big prediction preseason, but I think this is going to be a year where we do see some 11 over 6s and some 12 over 5s, which we, last year we had one, we had McNeese, but I believe the year before we didn't have any 12 over 5s. I think this year we're going to get one or two and maybe some 11 over 6s. I like what the mid-majors have this upcoming season. Now, finally, to end the question, a sleeper team to win the national championship. Now, that's kind of hard because you can't go too far down the line of like a team like, I don't know, like Florida was probably about as far as you could go last year, and they were 21st in the AP poll. It's a really hard thing to do. So I'm going to go with Arizona. I don't know if that's considered a sleeper to some. It might not be. Another team that I just think has a beautiful roster construction, Jaden Bradley is going to pop off as one of the more underrated players this upcoming season. Tremendous defender. Good offensively as well. He's going to run the point guard this upcoming season. They bring in the freshmen of Koa Pete and Braden Burries. They're going to have to be awesome for, Arizona to be a national championship threat. Anthony Del Orso is back. And then I love the platoon at the center position with Krivas and Toby Awaka. I think Awaka is going to start and Krivas will come off the bench. Either way, they're completely different. Awaka is 6'8", but built like a linebacker. He is a beast, can really rebound the basketball. And Krivas is 7'2". Krivas got hurt last year, kind of hurt this team. But what has Tommy Lloyd shown that he's not going to win? Like all he does is win pretty much. He won at Gonzaga. He's won every single year at Arizona. I think this could be his breakthrough year. This is one of my sneaky, Final Four national championship teams. Anthony Del Orso is also back. However, I do think it's just going to have to be one of the freshmen really stepping up into a lead role. And that's asking a lot for a freshman, which is why, it's going to be plus a lot of odds for Arizona to win the national championship. But I think they can do it. I can't imagine what this team would be like if they kept KJ Lewis. I'm not sure about the whole KJ Lewis situation. He transferred to Georgetown, made Georgetown a pretty good threat, but KJ Lewis could have been like absolutely awesome on this team. Maybe he thought, there's a lot of good pieces around here. He wants to be the star of the show. I can't say I blame him, but as good of a defender as KJ Lewis is, if he would have stuck with it here, this team would have been scary. Very, very scary. So I'm going with Arizona as my sneaky team for the national championship. All right, next up, thoughts, from Drew Proc. 09, thoughts on Gophers basketball, talking about Minnesota. First year under Nico Medved. They made the right hire. Nico Medved was the obvious choice in this situation. I think he's going to win here. The roster looks a little bit rough, as it's going to be at Minnesota with a little bit of a lack of money. They bring in Cade Tyson, transfer from North Carolina, who was kind of an embarrassment last year. But I do think this is a good spot for kind of a rebound year. for Cade Tyson. Their projected most used guy, over at Bart Torvik is Bobby Durkin. Isaac Asuma is also there. Langston Reynolds, BJ Omot has power conference experience. So the roster doesn't look too awesome. However, good for Minnesota. Rutgers and Penn State should absolutely be terrible this year. So I think Minnesota can climb above that. Now, if you were to put up here's my question. If you were to put up a Colorado State roster over the past 2 seasons, preseason, now we know what, some of those players turned into be. If you were to put them against a Big Ten, caliber team, so a team in the middle of Big Ten, say Ohio State, you'd have picked Ohio State 100% of the time. However, Colorado State was a much better basketball team last year than Ohio State was, even probably the year before. So it's like you got to kind of buy into Nico Medved. Will he be able to do it in the first season? I don't know. I think he is a fantastic coach. I think the future is bright for Minnesota. So in just a grand scheme of things, I think it's going to be great for Minnesota. I do believe Nico Medved will get you to a tournament. Just losing Dawson Garcia is just such a blow for the tournament, for just the floor of the team. But I think Nico Medved also raises that floor. So might be a rebuild year. In fact, it probably is a rebuild year. I don't think Minnesota fans are expecting to make the tournament, but if they can, be competent at, kind of defend your home court and beat the middle of the pack, like the Ohio States, the Marylands, we talked about Indiana, talked about Iowa. If you can beat those teams at home and just be, a team where, they got something good going there, I think that would be a successful season. I think it's going to happen under Nico Medved. All right, next up from Colin V. Who is your prediction for the best freshman? So I said we were going to talk about Cam Boozer. Cam Boozer is not my answer, but this is a great question. This is a very difficult question. I'm going with Darren Peterson. I did watch, like I said, don't buy into the exhibition games. Just watch the individual players. Don't worry about the scores. That game against Louisville, that Darren Peterson in the first half, I was watching it just in awe. I was like, this is not something we've seen. Like, he knew the lights were all on him. You're going to a Louisville team who's got a completely rebuilt, just rebuild program, basically, under the debacle under Kenny Payne. And what Darren Peterson did to go in and drop 24 in the first half, it was like, it didn't matter where he was from. Now it's definitely a hot night, no matter what. Like, he was hot on the court, but I have a feeling we're just going to see so many of these games. Like, it is just so effortless. He kind of looks like a deer out there, in the best, compliment I can give, a deer, where you're just so effortlessly moving, just so, light on his feet. Does not look like a freshman whatsoever. I saw Bill Self called him like a 25-year-old out there, and that's what he looks like. He takes the shots. He's smart. He can draw fouls. That opened my eyes. I was already on the Darren Peterson train as being the best freshman. I think it's so weird to say, because Cam Boozer just dropped 24 points, 23 rebounds against Tennessee, which was just ridiculous at Tennessee. And he scored 30 in their other preseason games. So like I said, don't buy too much into the exhibition, but still the eye test, just watching Darren Peterson was like, oh my goodness, that was something. And just in general, I think Duke has a little bit better of a team around Cam Boozer than Darren Peterson does. So I think Darren Peterson's usage will be a little bit higher. We should also mention AJ DeBanza. Like, he's awesome as well. However, just with it's nothing against AJ DeBanza. It's a compliment towards BYU's program. They have so many mouths to feed this year with Rob Wright, Richie Saunders, Kiba Kita. I think that team's just, they got so many options that they're not going to have to rely on AJ DeBanza as much as, Duke might rely on Cam Boozer, or I think Kansas is going to rely on Darren Peterson the most. And I think he's just going to, what's where I'm looking for? He's just going to shine, not shine, but just, ignite a little bit more. He's going to have a little bit more of just highlight reel stuff, I guess. I'm going with Darren Peterson. Great question, though. Can't wait to see all three of them play. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, next up, going to combine another two here from Cooper Carapuz, I believe. Michigan State season predictions, and also for Matthew Colombo, outlook on Michigan State. So I'm going to pull up, here's the graphic I used for when I did my preseason rankings. I have Michigan State at 25th. I believe they're, 20th in the preseason AP poll. I can't remember, maybe 22nd, something like that. So thank you, Cooper, and also thank you, Matthew, for the the question on Michigan State. I'm going to hide the question though, just for a second, to show the projected starting lineup looks like this. Jeremy Fears, Trey Fort, the transfer from Samford. This is according to John Rothstein's roster predictions, by the way. Trey Fort, Cohen Carr is back for another season, as is Jackson Kohler, as is Carson Cooper. So Michigan State loses Jace Richardson. They lose Trey Holloman to the transfer portal, where he heads over to where does Trey Holloman head over to? He heads over to NC State. Kerr Tang is also another notable guy who should have a significant role on this team. I think that their defense is going to be awesome. Top 10 in the country at worst, maybe top 5. I think their defense is going to be great, which is going to raise their floor for the season. Sorry if you see me looking over. I'm using my cheat sheet of looking of their complete roster and their non-conference schedule. I got pulled up. So if you see me looking, that's what it is. Maybe the most important piece of this graphic that I have up is the coach, and it is the most important piece. It's still coached by Tom Izzo. He's going to do a great job. He's kind of just, he's obviously in the Shaka Smart, Matt Painter sort of idea to not really bring in a bunch of transfers, which I can't say I blame him. He's won. This roster just doesn't do it offensively for me. Now, if you'd asked me that last year, I probably would have said the same thing. However, they did have a few more pieces with Jace Richardson and, obviously Trey Holloman. This season, I just don't know where the scoring is going to come from. Jackson Kohler will probably be your leading scorer, if I had to guess, unless Trey Ford or Kerr Tang is awesome on the offensive end. Cohen Carr he just can't shoot. He can't shoot as a 3. He is the best athlete in college basketball, but can't shoot too well. So I'm just a little concerned. Where does the shooting come from? Where does the scoring come from? But it's Michigan State. It's Tom Izzo. They're going to win. They have a tremendous home court environment. The ceiling is limited. The floor is also very high, but the ceiling is limited just with their offensive, unless someone just really, pops off and becomes an All-American. But yeah, it's going to be hard to see. Jackson Kohler is going to have a lot on his plate as the offensive guy. I think they're going to be good. I think they have kind of a small range of outcomes, quite frankly. I could see them anywhere from like a 4 seed to like a 7 seed, quite frankly. The bottom's not going to fall off, but it's just going to be hard to get there with, but Tom Izzo did it last year. He was a 2 seed, and it wasn't like it was just regular season success. He made the Elite 8. They were awesome last year with the team that even Tom Izzo went on a podcast and said, yeah, I don't know how we got to the Elite 8. We didn't, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he's like, we didn't have that much talent. It wasn't near the most talented team we had. Like, yeah. And I think this one's even a little bit less talented. So we'll see what he can do. But I trust in Tom Izzo. I trust in the, the brand, the home court advantage. I think Michigan State will be back in the NCAA tournament this upcoming season. All righty. From Christian Fernandez, overall thoughts on Louisville. Let's pull up a graphic of Louisville here. Here's your, I had them preseason ranked number 11th, as does the AP poll. This is their projected starting lineup. Mikkel Brown, the freshman, Isaac McNeely, Ryan Conwell, Javon Hadley, Kayshawn Pryor. Here's what I'm going to say about Louisville. They're going to be, like, don't get me wrong, they're going to be awesome. Like, if that's just the answer you're looking for, they're going to be great. I think they're probably going to be the most fun basketball team to watch this season, potentially, just with their shooting. It's going to be unbelievable. Get Ali Khalifa, who played in the exhibition game, look good. Get him on the block and just dishing out passes to these shooters. It's going to be so fun to watch. Get him, at the elbow there and just kicking out threes to Ryan Conwell, knocked down pretty lefty shot. Mikkel Brown struggled a little bit in the exhibition, but he'll be fine. Isaac McNeely, can't wait to see him out of the Virginia system. I think this team's going to be really good. I'm a little bit worried about just 3-point variance in general. What if you have a game where you go cold in the NCAA tournament? What if you run into a juggernaut defensive team who guards the 3-point line so good? What if you run into a Houston? This is nitpicking. Like, I think they're going to be great. That's the only thing I would say running into. Javon Hadley is also like an incredibly underrated piece. We also have Adrian Woolley coming off the bench, who's an outstanding shooter from Kennesaw State. So the shooting is there. However, is there enough of the other stuff where if you have a cold shooting night, like against Kansas, they didn't shoot it real well in the preseason game and they lost. Like I said, it's an exhibition game, doesn't really matter, but that can show when it comes out in in the regular season, they're going to make threes. Like, this team has no worries that they're going to make shots. However, when your identity is so stern on one thing, what happens if you have one cold game? That's my only nitpicking thing. The other thing I will mention with Pat Kelsey, a little bit notorious for having slow starts to the season. So if Louisville starts off a little bit sluggish, don't get too down. You're going to make shots. With this roster, you are going to make shots. You're going to make threes. And this is a team that can beat anybody in the country. Just like I said, what if you run into Houston? They can also beat Houston. They're one of the few teams that can beat Houston because they can knock down so many shots. It's just, will that 3-point variance be a little bit too much? Pat Kelsey, I said last offseason going into the season that he was my favorite coaching hire. Now, there was obviously a lot of other tremendous coaching hires last year, but Ben McCollum, Darian DeVries was great. I guess they didn't make the tournament, but obviously Mark Pope, Louisville's rival. I'm missing a ton of others, but I was so in on him because it was just a slight thing. I watched the team. It was Charleston. I believe they played FAU. This was what would that have been? 2 years ago. I believe they played FAU, and this was the FAU team that was an 8 seed and lost to Northwestern in the first round. In Charleston, it was maybe their first or second game of the season. They didn't look good. Their offense just looked awful. It didn't look like it meshed, and they were my preseason pick to win the conference, and I sold on them immediately. And then Pat Kelsey, they got off to a slow start. I believe they were 3-4 or 4-3 to start the season, and turned it around. Ended up being the 13 seed that played against Alabama, and they were a popular pick as a 13 over a 4 seed. Now, I didn't pick them because the team wasn't that talented, and I saw it early in the season against that FAU team. But for Pat Kelsey to get there, and then they put up, I believe, 87 or 88 points against that Alabama team. It was like, I was like, this was one of the most impressive coaching jobs I've ever seen, because this team wasn't that talented. They weren't that good, just quite frankly. You looked at them, they didn't pass the eye test. And he got them to a point where they were a popular pick, and they put up a ton of points on Alabama. That just kind of stuck with me forever. They were in the game against Alabama. Alabama made the Final Four. Was probably, one of their tougher games to reach the Final Four. And that just bought me in on Pat Kelsey. And then last year they got off to a little bit of a slow start, then really picked things up. Obviously, once ACC play came around, they obviously beat Indiana in the Battle for Atlantis as well. So they got off to a slow start. I'm not worried about it. Pat Kelsey's a great coach. Going to take them to the promised land. All right, let me pull up another question here. Bo Crow's not really a question, just says Drake May. Yeah, I agree. Drake May absolutely torched my Browns the other day. Drake May, what a tremendous comeback for the Patriots for this season. All right, will Xavier defy expectations? This from LSKL145. I should mention. I'm going to say yes. This is now, the reason I'm saying this is because their expectations are pretty low. Were they picked 10th in the Big East preseason poll? I think I had them 9th or 10th. I don't see that happening. It's just based on their roster. Like, their roster looks rough. There's no getting around it. I think they're going to be better. I think they're going to be towards the middle of the pack of the Big East. Richard Pitino, what a job he did at New Mexico. The past 2 seasons, made the NCAA tournament, won a game last year with Donovan Dent. Basically, like he had retention from the year before. He had Donovan Dent and JT Toppin. My goodness, how about that? And that was a team that was an 11 seed 2 years ago, and then he returned Donovan Dent, and he's like, all right, now you're going to have to be the star. And he ended up being the Mountain West Player of the Year. So that's, player development. Made the tournament 2 years in a row, nothing but success. I think Richard Pitino just obviously elevates this team a little bit. Their most notable pieces, Roddy Anderson is probably going to start at the point, which I don't love. A few other notable names, Trey Carroll, who was formerly at Florida Atlantic, is there. Isaiah Walker, All Right, who has one of the best names in all of college basketball, is also there. So the roster doesn't excite me. Just the Richard Pitino effect, I think, is going to do it, with the tremendous home court advantage that they also have at Xavier. And just the program just speaks for itself. I think they're going to be better. I know they're lacking in NIL money. Even Rick Pitino came out and said, I think my son's struggling with NIL money down there. It seems like they are. I I think they're going to be better than we think. I wouldn't be surprised if they climb above. Now, we all have them, pretty much everyone in the media has them again above Seton Hall, which is just tough for Seton Hall and Shaheen. They just don't have any money over there. I think the Big East is going to be better than people think. So I think Xavier is going to be better in the non-con than people think. They have a, kind of a slow non-con, which I probably would too. You get Marist and Lemoyne to start out the season, should be double-digit wins. Then you get Santa Clara. We'll see about that one. They get them at home, so that'll kind of be where we really figure out what Xavier's going to be. And then you get Iowa. How will they do against Iowa? I think Iowa will win. In fact, they're favored by 8 at Torvik in that game. Old Dominion, you should win. Georgia, we'll see. Georgia should also be down this year. I would probably pick Georgia in that matchup, though. Then you get Texas A&M Corpus Christi. You get St. Francis. Then you get the Crosstown Shootout, which is the big one. Biggest rivalry, or one of the biggest rivalries in college basketball. And you get it at Xavier. Torvik predicts it as Cincinnati by 1. So it could go either way. We know what that rivalry means. We'll see what Cincinnati is as well. And then, they round out non-conference play with Missouri State. So no ranked teams as of now for Xavier. So they should be able to get their feet wet by the time, the Big East comes around. And I think that they're going to be better than some people think. I think they're going to climb above a couple teams, but I think like I said, the Big East is going to be better than people think. Villanova is going to be better than you think. Georgetown should be back this year. Providence looks like they have a really good roster. We know what St. John's and UConn are going to be. Marquette is, they bring back a lot of pieces. They lose a lot, but they also have that retention factor. They have Shaka Smart. I think they're going to be all right. And then, Butler, we'll see what they can be. They have a pretty talented roster as well. So I think, and Creighton obviously is always very good. So I think this team, it might be hard to climb up, but I think they're going to be better than what people think. All right. And then Ian Bishop 27, this is going to be our last question of the day. Thoughts on K-State this year, on Kansas State? I did watch all of that Kansas State game against Missouri in the preseason. Took a few things away. First thing to take away is that PJ Haggerty is awesome. He is a tremendous basketball player, and Kansas State is very lucky to have him. You are bringing in, he was a second-team All-American last year. However, the pieces around him I'm not so fond of. Just watching Missouri and watching Kansas State in that exhibition game, it just looked like Missouri just had better players, quite frankly, and they do by most predictions. Kansas State is in the computer polls, they're 80th at Bart Torvik right now. 80th at Bart Torvik. That's pretty low. If this to me is going to be a team that's going to be on the bubble all year. I think they're going to be, some weeks they're in, some weeks they're out. Gun to my head, I would probably pick that they missed the tournament this year, as sad as that kind of sounds. Just the pieces around him just don't really do it for me. Like PJ Haggerty might literally if you had to tell me to pick one guy who's going to lead the nation in scoring, like bet your entire life money on it, I would probably bet PJ Haggerty. I think he's going to be outstanding. They bring in Nate Johnson as well to transfer from Akron. We'll see how he transfers up. CJ Jones is there. David Castillo is back. Abdi Bashir Jr. He did not look great in the scrimmage, in my opinion. It's just PJ Haggerty is so good that he's going to raise the floor for this team. He can get to the rim. He draws fouls like crazy. If the continuation rule is going to help anyone more in the country, it's going to be PJ Haggerty. Like, he is going to have so many and ones. He is tremendous. Is there enough around him? Can Jerome Tang put it together? Jerome Tang, I saw him interviewed where he said that, he didn't do a good job last year. And I would agree. That team was really talented last year. And he said his assistant coaches basically had to call him out. Now, I love Jerome Tang. He seems like if there's a guy who I would just want to go hang out with, that's a college basketball coach, it'd probably be Jerome Tang. He seems like a really cool guy. So I'm hoping he can really get this put together. But after the first season, it hasn't gone smoothly for Jerome Tang. Now, he has his best player since he had with Marquise Noel and with Keontae Johnson, probably the best player he's had with PJ Haggerty. So we'll see how far he can carry him. The roster around him doesn't look great, but he is awesome. So I'm a little lower on Kansas State than most, but Torvik has him at 80th in the preseason. I'm not quite sure what they are at KenPom, but I would guess it's probably around that same area. So yeah, Kansas State, I'm kind of selling, but I'm buying on PJ Haggerty, and I am rooting for him. I would like to see Kansas State really get back into the mix, because that home court environment is just absolutely awesome. Alrighty, that is going to do it for the show today. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. Thanks for all the questions. Really, really good questions. I like people asking about individual team. Love the questions about, just overall, best freshmen and, sleeper teams. Love that kind of stuff. So thanks to everyone for sending those in. Thanks to everyone for listening to the show today and sticking with me here. Hopefully the insight was a little bit helpful. So we're under a week until college basketball starts. I'm not sure if we're going to have one more. We probably won't, as crazy as it sounds. Our next episode will be previewing day 1 and day 2, I believe, of college basketball, because the 4th has some good games. The 3rd also has some good games. So we're going to be previewing ball the next time we talk. That's pretty exciting stuff. So be sure to hit that like button before you head out. Subscribe to the show, whether that's on video, audio, or both. Turn on those post notifications and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Bracket Science. With 2 S's, we will talk to you again when we preview some games, preview the season. Till then, take care.